The following position was reached in the game of Nodibek Abdusattorov, playing with the white pieces against David Navara. We are starting with a nice tactical puzzle for you. It's white to play, and you can take your time here a bit, pause the video, and then hopefully you can see the move played in the game. It's absolutely brilliant tactical idea. I will show you the solution at the end of the video. First, I'm going to cover the game in its entirety because in the game itself, a lot of amazing tactical ideas can be seen as well. So let's get back to the very start, as Abdusattorov starts the game with one e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop c4. It's the Italian opening we see so many times at top level play. It's an interesting opening, an old opening, but still new ideas are usually found. The game is built up in a slow way. As we can see in the first 10 moves, we will not get to see any captures yet. b4, attacking the bishop on c5, bishop b6, a4, threatening to trap the bishop with the move a5. Therefore, black played the move a5 here, challenging the pawn on b4. In the meantime, white advances the pawn to b5. The knight goes back to e7, and after knight bd2, castling kingside for both sides, the knight comes to g6. All pretty standard, has been seen in a lot of games, and white has to decide how to proceed. One idea could be to move the bishop away and then continue developing your position in a rather slow way. The knight can come to c4, but Abdusattorov plays the direct move d4 to put pressure in the center, grabbing space. And, well, this was seen in a number of other games. In most games here, black continues with the move bishop g4. I often think that's a good way of playing. Whenever white is trying to advance the pawn to d4 to put pressure in the center, it makes sense to pin the knight on f3 with your bishop, so you're indirectly hitting the pawn on d4. But in this game, Navara didn't go for the move bishop g4. Instead, he played the move pawn takes d4, which is something you can see in a number of games as well, but you do give the center to white here. White has now two very nice pawns, therefore black practically has only one move to try to bounce back in the center with the move d5, attacking the bishop and the pawn on e4. Pawn takes d5, knight takes d5. So white is now playing with an isolated queen's pawn, which can become a weakness, but at the same time we see that white also does have a lot of extra space for its pieces to maneuver. So queen b3 is played here to attack the knight on d5 one more time. Black defends the knight with the move c6, and white places the rook on the open file. Well, this is interesting position. Frankly speaking, I do like white's position a bit better. I think black always has to be careful for weaknesses. Maybe the bishop on b6 is vulnerable. Any time white is about to take on c6, or maybe to take on d5 as well. So I prefer white. But with a move like bishop e6, I think black is able to consolidate its position and maybe is only slightly worse. But in the game, the move knight b4 was played, which is understandable, as the knight is now supported by a pawn, and the knight is okay. But at the same time, you do move away your knight from the center, and I can see that in the long run, the pawn on f7 can become a clear target for the white pieces. Now the bishop and the queen are already directed at that pawn, and very soon the knights can also help out to put black under pressure on that side of the board. Well, knight e4 was played in the game, activating the knight and getting ready to develop the bishop to a nice square. It should be clear that the pawn on d4 cannot be taken here. Then white is just going to take on d4, and after queen takes, the bishop comes to b2, it hits the queen, and now wherever the queen goes to, let's say the queen goes to b6 for instance, then the move queen c3 is played with a huge mating threat on g7, and obviously the pawn cannot go to f6. That's not allowed because of the bishop on c4. So white is just winning here instantly. Black cannot take the pawn on d4. Probably still black should try to get the bishop into the game, but instead Navara goes for the move pawn takes b5. I'm not sure about this plan after a takes b5. It seems to me that the knight, even though it's supported by the pawn, it doesn't have a way out. White has very simple plans even just to go bishop a3 and try to take on b4 and win a pawn. So things are not looking great. Bishop f5 played here by black, and now the knight comes in from f3 to g5, hitting the pawn on f7. Now the board is set on fire and you have to be very careful. The game is now very sharp and a lot of lines have to be calculated here. Well, black played the move queen d7 to defend the pawn on f7 one more time, but white has a very strong move here, which was not played in the game. Abdusattorov just continued with bishop a3, and frankly speaking, it's a very natural move. I understand it, but missed opportunity as knight takes f7 is just a huge blow to black's position. If you do take that piece on f7, the other knight will come in to g5 to hit the rook on f7. So if you do win the rook, white will be an exchange up eventually. And well, there's no convenient way to defend the rook on f7. If you go, for instance, like a knight h8, then spectacular idea. Look at this. Queen sacrifice. Queen takes b4. A takes b4. Rook takes a8. And black is in big trouble. You can only block the check with your bishop. But now the key move here, and it's a position in which white has only one rook for the queen, but everything is pinned. Rook e5 is a great move with the plan of going rook d5 and hit the queen and the bishop. And since the rook on f7 is pinned, the knight on h8 cannot move. White is just completely winning. Should be said though that instead of knight h8, maybe rook a f8 could be played, but then it's knight takes f7, rook takes f7, and the bishop comes to a3 once again. And the plan is to take on b4, to open up the a file so that the rook can come in. And once again, white's pieces are super active. So this is looking absolutely great for white. Well, this was not played in the game. Bishop a3 was the game's continuation by Abdusattorov. Rook a8. Now the rook has been centralized. Bishop takes b4, a takes b4. So the knight is now off the board. And okay, there are also ideas for black to take on d4 any time soon. Well, still, knight takes f7 is a good move, but here again it was not played. Let me try to understand why this was not played. Because of rook takes f7, knight g5, hitting the rook once again. And if you go knight h8, well, there is the move rook e5 again with a threat to go to d5 and hit the queen and the rook on the d file. Well, this is a very complicated and deep line because also the pawn on d4 is hanging. Now also both rooks are hanging, so absolutely insane tactics on the board. But there's knight takes f7. If you take back, otherwise there would follow a huge discover check. The rook comes into d1 and white is winning here, because the main trick is that bishop takes f2 doesn't work. If you go for this move and take the rook on d1, you can take the trade of the queens, and then it will be checkmate at the end of the line. Well, I understand this is almost impossible for us to calculate. Also, top grandmasters like Abdusattorov and Navara were not able to work out all these lines. So this was not played in the game. And well, instead, Abdusattorov wanted to play for a more controlled type of play in the center, as he played the move knight c5. Which is in fact a serious mistake. He does attack the queen, but the pawn on d4 can be taken by the queen. But this was also not played by Navara. And are these players so bad? No, the position is just so incredibly complex, because what is going on? I was trying to look at this line and I'm thinking, okay, the knight is hanging, and if the knight goes away, then black is even threatening to take on f2. But I was thinking, okay, probably Navara didn't play this move queen takes d4 as he was afraid of knight takes f7. Attacking the rook, you're not caring about this knight on c5, because if you can take on d8, you will be material up. But apparently the move rook c8, this is such a difficult move, is just really strong, because there is no good discover check. Everything is hanging in white's position. The knight on c5, if the knight goes away, also the bishop on c4. So apparently this is working out very well for black. Okay, instead of taking with a knight on f7, bishop takes f7 is a possible continuation. the king goes into the corner. And if you take on g6, its bishop takes g6, and still the knight is hanging on c5. You can create a knight fork by coming to e6, but then black can take on f2 with check. The king goes into the corner, and with the move rook d to e8, you're ensuring that the knight is not able to take on f8 because of the pin, as in that case black will take on e1. Incredibly crazy, insane lines. Don't get me wrong, I'm not judging the players for any sort of bad performance. So let's see what happened. Instead of queen takes d4, Navara played queen c7. He wants to stay safe with the queen, but now the rook comes to the c file. As you can see, there are potential threats against the queen, and white even indirectly supports the knight on c5. Obviously, taking on c5 is not possible because that hangs the queen on c5. So therefore, after rook ac1, knight f4 was played, and okay, I think that white is doing pretty well. If you try to consolidate your position with a move like queen e3, or maybe even something like rook e5 could be considered, that's perfectly playable. But Abdusattorov goes for this move. Bishop takes f7. He's playing for tactics. The position is really sharp, so it's a very tempting move. And the idea is that if you take with the rook, you're not going to take everything on f7, because that at the end of the line, you are just having two minor pieces for the rook. But here the key move is this move, knight d3, with an attack, discovered attack on the queen. And the queen is overloaded. It got to keep both the rook on f7 defended, as it's hit by the queen and the knight, as well as the knight on f4, which is now hit by the knight on d3. So white is winning back the material with interest. So therefore, instead of taking on f7, king h8 is played. And now, obviously, knight d3 is not such a big deal, because the queen can just stay on the diagonal and keep the knight defended. After king h8, white played here the move queen f3, which looks very, very sharp, with potential threats against the queen on the c file. But here the move h6 is played. So you're attacking the knight, but the knight doesn't go away. It stays there on g5. It's a very important attacker. And white played instead the move knight takes b7. This was one of the hidden ideas behind the move queen f3. The queen protects the knight on b7, and the rook on c1 hits the queen. Is this missed by black, you may wonder? No, not at all. White doesn't get a chance to take the rook on d8, because black played here insane idea of knight e2. Beautiful move, absolutely stunning idea. It's a check, and you're hitting the rook on c1. If you take with the rook, it's queen takes c1, and it's black who is giving checkmate. Therefore, queen takes e2 got to be played. But now the knight on b7 is no longer hanging. So when we're counting the pieces, material is even. But the knight on g5 is vulnerable. If the knight goes away, black has the possibility to take on f7. Now, white probably should get the queen into the game. Queen h5 to secure the knight. The h-pawn is pinned, so cannot take. And things are far from clear. Abdusattorov had a different idea in mind. He played the move rook to c6. Fantastic idea. Rook is looking very nice here. I say fantastic, but it's not objectively speaking a good move. But the idea is that now h takes g5 can be met by queen h5 check. And the only move to avoid mate is bishop h7, but then it's bishop g6, and it will be mate on the next move by taking the bishop on h7. After rook c6, bishop takes d4 is played. So black just takes a very important pawn. The bishop is now centralized, helping in defense, eyeing the pawn on f2. And what should white do? Well, white, of course, understands that there are some issues regarding the pawn on f2. So played here the move king h1, getting out of any potential check on f2 with the bishop. And here we are at the critical moment of the game. We have already seen many critical moments, but here we are at the final part of the game, because Navara decided to take here on f7. And then we have the position we started this video with. And the idea, of course, is that if white is going to take the rook, well, then after queen takes f7, black is in great shape with 2 bishops for the rook. There's absolutely no problem at all. But can you see, once again, the killer move here for white? It's a fantastic idea. There is this move, rook to d6. Fantastic idea, as I said. As instead you would like to play a move like queen e8, hoping to give checkmate, but then there is still the move rook f8 blocking the check on the 8 rank, so queen e8 is not working at all. But by starting with the move rook d6, you're trying to deflect the rook from d8. If you do take on d6, then of course it's queen e8 with checkmate, rook f8, queen takes f8, it's mate. And also taking the knight on g5 is not a possibility. You take the rook, and after king h7, you give checkmate on h5. Beautiful idea. After rook d6, well, there is no good defense here because you're just threatening to take on d8 or to take on f7. And well, if you play, for instance, the move rook f8, then you can take on d8 as well, because after rook takes, then again, it's queen e8 with checkmate, as if you take the queen, it is indeed mate. Well, rook d6 is the killer move. The game continued here with the move rook c8. Black is trying to avoid any back rank issues, but now it's knight takes f7. You take the rook with check, queen takes, and now you take the bishop on d4. White is an exchange and a pawn up. Of course, you got to be a little bit careful still with that b pawn, but after b3, white can also run with its own pawn. There is no problem here. The rook can get behind if it wants. After rook c2, attacking the queen just goes to f3, pinning the bishop on f5. Black tried here the move b2, but now it's b7. The white's b pawn is just faster, threatening to promote with check. The queen goes back to f8, so keeping the bishop defended as well. But now, very nice and simple move. You can just go back with the rook to d1. I mean, probably other moves are also good as well, but now you're 100% sure that the b pawn is not going to promote. Rook c1 is not an option. You can simply take it twice. So black moved the rook to c5, and now after the move queen b3, it's time to resign because the b pawn is about to promote. You're threatening to take on b2, and after bishop c2, well, there is the move b8 queen, as the queens are protecting each other, and white is also threatening to take the queen on f8. So after the move queen b3, Navara resigned. Big win for Nodibek Abdusattorov, who is moving into the sole lead now. He's on 2.5 out of 3. Big performance, big victory, but I just want to go back 1 second with you to the critical moment of the game, because here we are, as white's last move is king h1. And, well, we have seen that the move rook takes f7 is leading to the game, but as I already clicked on the wrong move, on the right move, I should say, the move bishop h7, that is the killer move, which stops all the tactical possibilities, and white is just lost after the move bishop h7. What is the idea? Once again, you want to take on g5, but after bishop h7, there is no longer a check on the h file. So h takes g5 is a serious option. Let's say we have seen the idea with hg5, queen h5, bishop h7, bishop g6, white is winning. But by playing the move bishop h7, you're threatening to take the knight. And after taking on h7, well, there's rook takes f7, everything is under control, and the white knight is just trapped. It cannot get out. It will be captured very soon. And the other moves are not really possible because everything is just hanging. For instance, if you do play the move knight e6, which looks like a beautiful knight fork, well, then the queen can just take on f7, and after knight takes one of the rooks, you can take the rook, and well, it's 2 bishops against the rook. So here black is also winning. Well, remarkable tactics. Maybe it's not entirely clear, but I do hope you appreciate the richness of our royal game. So many brilliant tactics created by these legendary players. Let me know in the comments what do you think of this game. And of course, if you like this video, please subscribe and help me grow to more than 5,000 subscribers. I will continue, so hope to see you soon back again.